This week in game news, we have the news of a new Fallout, urgent advice for anybody with games on Desura, updates on the upcoming E3, and a bunch of announcements from Nintendo. This is the Blackman and Robin Game News Update.
It's another fabulous day.
On Monday, there was a surprise Nintendo Direct Micro presented by Bill Trinan of Nintendo of America. A surprisingly large number of games were covered in the time allotted. Some of the highlights include Chibi Robo, Ziplash, which is out on October of 2015 for the 3DS, and it has some really cool platforming gameplay. It's been a long time since we've seen a new Chibi Robo, and this one looks pretty promising. There's also Dr. Mario, Miracle Cure for the 3DS, it's a multiplayer puzzler. Then too, there's the news that Splatoon would be receiving a new free weapon and map, as well as ranked mode for players at level 10 or above. That rolled out on Monday. A new Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon was also unveiled. In the game, you've been turned into a Pokemon, and you must explore dungeons, and of course it's up to you to save the world. This time it's the world of Pokemon, as some Pokemon are being turned into stone for some reason. The game is set to come out this winter. Did you enjoy the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games 2012 game that came out some years ago? Well, they're returning to the Olympics for Rio 2016, and just between you and me, this will probably be the best Sonic game of 2016. Something that caught my eye was the Little Battlers Experience video game. While I'm not very familiar with the LBX television show, the game itself looks pretty interesting. It boasts customizable fighting robots, and it's set to come to the 3DS August 21st, 2015. Finally, Bravely Default, Second End Layer, which is a pretty terrible name for what looks to be a pretty cool game, is coming out sometime soon. This is the Western release of the sequel to Bravely Default, a critically acclaimed JRPG by Square Enix. You know, the one that's not Final Fantasy. You can check out the game's first screenshots at blackmanandrobin.com. Also, there was a bit of a Zelda tease.
Let's take a second to talk E3. This year at the show, we'll be focusing on going into depth and detail on a variety of games for Wii U and Nintendo 3DS that will be launching in 2015 and early 2016. But there will also be a little something called
the Nintendo World Championships!
And I'm excited to reveal one of the games contestants and viewers should prepare for. It's a secret to everybody.
Does this mean that we'll finally see more info on the next Legend of Zelda? Perhaps. I guess we'll find out at E3. This week, quite a few games were released on Steam. To start with, Ark: Survival Evolved hit Early Access. This is a game that I've had my eye on for a little while. It's a survival game, multiplayer as you might have guessed, that features dinosaurs. In Ark, you're dropped on an island in the middle of nowhere, and your goal is to tame dinosaurs in order to survive. After having played a bit of the game, I have to say that it is really interesting. It obviously does need a lot of work since this is very early in its early access period. Right now the developers are primarily focused on optimizing the game. The game's most recent patch enabled it to run for folks who have lower end graphics cards. Unfortunately, this is a patch that excited me since I don't exactly have a beast rig to run with. I have a half gigabyte graphics card, and this game calls for something a little bit more. Still, I was able to run Ark Survival Evolved, albeit on lower settings. There's still a lot of optimization that needs to be done, as my frame rate was not pretty. Still, the game shows plenty of promise, and I suspect it'll turn out a whole lot better than the Stomping Grounds, which, regrettably, was abandoned by its developers a little while ago. The developers of Ark Survival Evolved have also announced that the game is set to come out to Mac and Linux by the end of June 2015. It's set to come out to consoles next year. If you're more of a dogfighting than a dinosaur fighting sort of person, you might be pleased to hear that Air Brawl has just been released on Steam. Currently available in early access, the game has been compared to Team Fortress 2, but with airplanes. If you've been looking for an arcadey multiplayer dogfighting game, check this one out. It's currently available for Mac, PC, and Linux. Do you remember the ill-fated LEGO universe? It was to be a massively multiplayer LEGO building game, but unfortunately it ran into some moderation issues, and it was eventually shut down. In this post-Minecraft era, LEGO is trying again, this time with LEGO Worlds. which has just been released on Steam in early access. It's been called LEGO's take on Minecraft, although there are some pretty key differences. To start with, LEGO Worlds features vehicles, and dragons, and a terrain that can be edited a whole lot more than one block at a time, and the ability to build things and then export them to use them in other things. Even though the game is still in its early days of early access, it has gotten some very good response. The general consensus among players is that this game is essentially the hybrid of their LEGO set and Minecraft. Not only do they have all the open-world freedom that Minecraft had afforded them, but there's the power in the pieces that they love about LEGO. LEGO Worlds, at current, is available for PC. Let's say that you purchase a game on Steam, but for some reason it doesn't work for you. Maybe your computer crashes, or the game won't run right. Maybe you find the game disappointing, or it's not what the developers have promised it will be. Well, good news, Valve has just updated its Steam refund policy. Officially, you can request a refund for nearly any purchase on Steam for any reason. This isn't without restrictions. If the game that you've purchased has been played for 2 hours or more, it's no longer eligible for a refund. Additionally, Valve does not consider it abuse if you purchase a game one day and then you get a refund of it the next day because the game has gone on sale, so long as you haven't gone over the 2-hour limits. As per usual, Valve has run into some backlash for this latest move. What if, for instance, you're a developer who has made a game that can be beaten in an hour and a half? Will people play out your game and then get a refund? Regarding abuse, Valve did say that if it appears to us that you are abusing refunds, we may stop offering them to you. So maybe things will be handled on a case-by-case basis, or at least there will be some sort of monitoring involved. Whatever the case, it seems that Valve is taking more steps to improve their customer service, which has a reputation for being utterly abysmal. I think that once we get around the hurdles for shorter games, this could actually be a good thing for developers who make smaller experiences. There's a chance that with this new refund policy, people will be a little less risk-averse with regard to buying short games. If that happens, it'll be a good thing for the gaming ecosystem as a whole. One Kickstarter that caught my eye this week was for a game called Shape of the World. Shape of the World is an exploration game in the vein of such things as Proteus. It asks the question, if a man walks through a forest and there's no trees around him, will they grow? Or something like that. According to the developers, it's a game about the thrill of getting lost. It's deliberately disorienting. The forest only materializes around you when you get close to it, and it regrows in a new way each time you pass through it. Personally, I really like the game's minimalistic style. It seems that both the gameplay and the aesthetic were heavily inspired by Proteus, although the game does seem to have a somewhat different sense of color than Proteus. It seems a lot softer and more nuanced, which I like a lot. At the time of production, the game had raised nearly $9,500 of its $60,000 goal, and has a little under a month to go on Kickstarter. Right now, the developers are aiming at bringing the game to the Xbox One. It's already been greenlit for distribution on Steam, and it's set to come out sometime around July of 2016. Yet another game on Kickstarter this week is The Bard's Tale 4. Coming from In Exile Entertainment, the developers of the critically acclaimed Wasteland 2, The Bard's Tale 4 picks up the beloved classic RPG series where it left off. At the time of production, the Kickstarter has over a month to go, and they've already raised well over $1 million of their $1.25 million goal. What the developers are promising thus far is a game that will not only be chock full of traditional RPG combat, but also puzzles, story, and a richly realized fantasy world. The game is set in a place called Skara, and it draws elements from Scottish culture. Thus, you can expect to see lots of Scottish-inspired architecture, hear Gaelic music, and perhaps at some point wade your way through the loch. Another Kickstarter that caught my eye this week was for We Happy Few. It's a game that seems inspired by Brave New World, and it's set in a war-torn dystopian version of a small English town, the ominously named Wellington Wells. In We Happy Few, the population is controlled with drugs called joy. Your goal as a player is to survive, to try conforming to look like everybody else in order to avoid suspicion. If you manage to raise the ire of the Wellies, as they're affectionately called, they'll hunt you down in a homicidal mob. The thing is, you're a downer. You're not taking the joy that makes all these people so happy, and they don't like that very much at all. I think that this is one of the more creative takes on the procedurally generated first-person survival game. It's a bit like BioShock, albeit with more of a focus on blending in as opposed to combat. This is definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on. I really love the creepy feel of the game. According to the developers, the characters are not typical video game heroes. They're flawed and not particularly heroic, and each has been warped by the trauma their world has been through. We Happy Few is set to come out in June of 2016 for PC. While we're on the topic of drugs, Big Pharma has gone into beta. It's a tycoon-style video game about starting your own pharmaceutical company and trying to make a profit. Can you do so ethically? Perhaps. Or perhaps not. I really like the look of the game as well as the premise, and it's set to come out to Steam sometime soon. Right now, it's available at bigpharmagame.com. I really like when games tackle this sort of subject matter. If this sounds like your cup of tea, and I'm not talking about opium tea, you should definitely check out Big Pharma. These are the days leading up to E3, and as such, there are a ton of announcements. One rather exciting game to be announced this week was XCOM 2. Announced by 2K, this is a new tactics game set in the same world as the previous XCOM Enemy Unknown, but in XCOM 2, the aliens have successfully taken over the world. They've managed to establish their own revisionist history, and you seem to have the goal of stopping them in some capacity. The tables in this new XCOM game have turned. You no longer have the advantage of a multi-billion-dollar government-funded XCOM program. Rather, you've got a super-secret base, a jet, and a squad of Marines. Unlike the previous XCOM, XCOM 2 is going to be a PC exclusive. From what we've seen in the trailer thus far, there are to be new features and new creatures, such as the creepy snake people, and the ability to rescue downed units. Right about now, I'm halfway through Enemy Unknown's campaign. I've not yet completed that game, but I've really been enjoying it thus far, so I'm going to be keeping a close eye on XCOM 2.
Welcome back, Commander.
If you enjoyed the Tomb Raider reboot, you'll be pleased to know that the sequel, Rise of the Tomb Raider, is set to be shown off during E3. In expectation of that, Square Enix has released a very classy new trailer. Check it out.
The boldest have dared to go further. They risk death, and in doing so live on forever. What drives these few to the ends of the earth? The desire to discover something more. The search for something greater. The world is full of unanswered questions. Beyond all limits or reason, the answers await. For some, discovering the secrets of the world is the only way to live.
After plenty of teasing, Fallout 4 was unveiled alongside a first trailer. Coming to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, Bethesda's hotly anticipated post-apocalyptic RPG is set, this time around, in Boston. There have been rumors that in this game you'll be playing as a voiced protagonist, though that has yet to be officially confirmed. We'll be seeing more of this during Bethesda's E3 conference, which is coming up very soon. You can watch the full trailer at blackmanandrobin.com.
Folks, it seems we've got some breaking news. Stand by.
All over, though I'm trying to forget about how much I care for you.
We seem to have lost contact with our affiliate stations. Stand by. We do have coming in confirmed reports of nuclear detonations.
My God. Our soldiers were right. War never changes.
Another E3 trailer has been released for the Kickstarter success story Kingdom Come: Deliverance. In case you've not heard of it, Kingdom Come is promising a realistic RPG set in medieval Europe during a time of conflict. The game's tagline is Dungeons, no Dragons. The game thus far is quite beautiful, and I look forward to seeing what they have to show off during E3. If you're a fan of Mountain Blade, you might want to look into it. We have time for one more E3 trailer, this time for a game called The Assembly, an adventure game in which players explore a mysterious organization, the titular Assembly, which has been conducting illegal and possibly unethical experiments. The game's set to come to the Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and Sony's upcoming Project Morpheus.
I came here to prevent epidemics. Now, we might have created one. They want me to stay quiet. How many lives is it gonna take?
All my reputation, all the prizes. None of it means anything if I can't change things. If I can't save anyone.
I've got to get the truth out there before it's too late.
Lives must be saved, whatever the cost.
And today of all days, they want me to induct a new member? Whoever you are, you have no idea what you're getting into.
Is anyone there?
Hello, madam. the assembly.
If you own any games on Desura, might we make a suggestion? Get out of there. Now, Bad Juju, the parent company that owns Indie Royale and Desura, has just filed for bankruptcy. As of late, Desura has run into some very serious issues regarding payments to developers. That is, developers have not been getting paid for sales of their games on the platform. Bad Juju has been rather cagey as to what's going on, and now it's quite apparent that they're broke. If you own any games on Desura, I'd recommend downloading them now. Additionally, if you ever purchased an Indie Royale bundle, I recommend snatching up your Steam keys straight away. This is rather sad news, and I do hope that Desura gets to stick around for a while, as well as the Indie Royale bundles. That said, right now it might be best to be prepared for a worst-case scenario.
Depends on who you ask.
If you're like me and you haven't yet played the Uncharted series, well, here's your chance. Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, is set to come to the PlayStation 4. It features the whole Uncharted trilogy remastered for the next-gen console. Additionally, if you purchase the collection, you'll also get access to the Uncharted 4 multiplayer beta. Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, is set to come out on October 9, 2015. One game that's set to come to both the PlayStation 4 and the PC just a little bit sooner is Rocket League. Out on July 7, 2015, Rocket League is a very different sort of game. It's a football game, that is, what Americans refer to as soccer, and it features cars. Rocket-powered cars. Speaking honestly, I can't really bring myself to care about sports games in much the same way I don't really care about real-life sports, but I had a really great time playing Rocket League. It's fast-paced, easy to get into, and pretty well designed. Worth noting is that when the game launches, it's going to feature crossplay between the PlayStation 4 and PC versions. If a multiplayer-focused football game with rocket-powered cars sounds like your sort of thing, check out this game. Finally, the critically acclaimed This War of Mine is coming to Android and iOS tablets. In case you've not heard of it, This War of Mine is a war game that puts you in the boots of a civilian. You're not a soldier fighting for your freedom. Rather, you are an innocent civilian caught in the crosshairs. The game presents players with a number of moral quandaries. For instance, somebody innocent may be under attack. You might want to help the person, but at the same time, you'll be putting yourself in risk. When you make decisions in the game, you have to consider not only how they affect your character, but also how they affect the morale of characters around you. It's a very interesting game, and you should definitely check out our review of it at blackmanandrobin.com. Well, that's it for this week's game news. Be sure to follow at blackmanandrobin on Twitter for all the latest game news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Be sure to follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my other views.
I was alone.